it's time to keep the ball rolling and start our next segment, What's on Trial, where we review something, pretty much. That's what we do. We're like, hey, what's on trial this week? And then we just review whatever's on trial. That's all. I did get a message from our pal Dawson that I think he wanted me to play for everybody out there listening. So
reporting live from Iraq. A lot of boogans out here. Reporting live.
So that's our good buddy Dawson. He's reporting live from Iraq. I guess there's a lot of boogans out there. But anyways, time to actually get going with our next segment, What's on Trial. We're starting a new series of movies for the month of September. It's going to be disaster movies. Thank you again to everyone who voted on our Instagram. If you aren't already, follow us at the Nerd Authorities and keep up with us there. If you have any suggestions for disaster movies going forward, you can also reach out to us on our Instagram or email us at the nerdauthoriespodcast@gmail.com, and we might take them into consideration. We might not, though, because
we already have a layout of movies we have planned on anyways.
Yeah, but I think we're not going to announce any of them yet. There's a few that like we're for sure doing, but if we got a recommendation, someone's like, "Hey, I love your guys' podcast. I really want you guys to talk about this," and pretty good chance we will. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, we're just gonna pick random bullshit like this movie and just talk about it. So this week we're starting with The Day After Tomorrow, which I think it's a pretty iconic disaster movie. I mean, I had heard of it and I hadn't seen it. Neither of us.
It's like the climate change, the movie.
Yeah, and just like the cover and stuff with like the frozen Statue of Liberty. I think it's pretty iconic. I think it was not one of the first ever disaster movies, but first like of a new age.
First of this director.
Yeah, Roland
Emmerich or something.
Yeah, that's something we didn't realize, that like this dude fucking directed like all of these, because we're deciding.
He directed this 2012 and Independence Day,
Moonfall, and I think something else too. I don't remember, but yeah, pretty fucking crazy. Because we're deciding between this and 2012, and honestly, I wanted to do 2012 because I feel like that's a little bit more iconic as like a disaster movie, but it's fucking 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and like there's no fucking way it's worth that runtime. So
yeah,
I was fine with The Day After Tomorrow. Yeah. Directed by Roland Emmerich. What year did it come out? Do you know?
04 or 06?
Yeah, I think it was 04. Yeah, that sounds right. Well, I took some notes. I did kind of what we were doing with like the DC movies, where I did like chronological notes, just like as the movie was going. And we can go over like the sections too, but do you want to hear my notes, my comments as we were watching the movie?
Sure.
Or just do you want to talk about it some first, and then we can.
I don't care.
Well, I think, but yeah, just for some general discussion. It's a very interesting movie. Like,
it's odd.
Yeah.
I think the best. Well, let's make it clear. We watched this in 2 days. We watched the first like hour one night, and then like the next hour the next day. And I think that was both the best and worst thing we could have done.
Yeah.
Because I think what needs to be said about this movie is that the pacing is fucking horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And like the first 40 minutes is like nuts. It's storm after storm, and like it's just pretty good. I was like, oh,
building intensity and stuff,
and then like the last hour is just nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and it's one of those things that like you don't really think about it at the time, and then at the end of the movie you're like, man, nothing really happened for a while.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But I mean, I don't think it's like a bad movie necessarily. And
It likes to ride the line.
yeah, I don't like hate it by any means. I definitely think like I can see why some people really like it and enjoy it. I will say, yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, let me read my chronological notes. Just as I was watching the movie, typing stuff out, and then we can go into our segments or structure, whatever. Fuck, I was gonna say something I forgot. Oh yeah, spoilers. It was 2004 movie, 19 years ago. Movie starts off Antarctica, so I said Antarctica. That's where the penguins live. Off to a good start.
Yeah, that whole opening sequence is pretty. It's kind of rough.
He jumps over like the whatever you call it canyon that's forming to grab like tubes, and
Where it's never explained what those tubes are.
Yeah, or like yeah, goofy. Under 5 minutes in, I was like, I don't know if I'm really gonna enjoy this series because I'm like, I mean, the first act, it's like, I'm a scientist guy, and it's like, actually, the world's about to end, and it's like, oh my god, yeah. This is what most of these movies are gonna be like. I'm a science guy, and the world's gonna end.
I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I'm gonna say the world's gonna end.
There's a lot of shit in front of the camera, and that UN scene, the way that's filmed is fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like you should look up that scene because like the whole UN scene, they're just doing like these weird like close up where it's like it's not even like panning. It's just like because it's staying focused on the one person, and it's just like rotating the camera and moving it around, and just having like random shit get in front of the camera, like out of focus. And that's like, it's not even like a cutting point. It's like they let it get like completely in front of the camera, and then they cut to someone else, and then the camera moves, and it's like, it's fucking weird. Yeah. I might have to pull that up just to like remind you, but it's weird just the way it's shot. And there's some of that later on in the movie too, but that scene, it was like 4 or 5 shots back to back where it's just like, what are we doing here? When they're like in Japan, or not in Japan, no one is in Japan, just that scene in Japan with the hail, and like the hail starts coming down. It's like, oh, that's crazy. That one dude just like rams his moped into this storefront, and it's like you don't see him get hit by hail or anything.
He's wearing a helmet too.
Yeah, he's just like, man, all this hail is making me want to ram my moped into this storefront. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Like, yeah, you're wearing a helmet. Like,
yeah, you're
not knocked out. There's no fucking way.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh my god, the world's ending. It's like really big hail. I'm gonna crash. I don't know.
Like, yeah, the hail was big.
Yeah, but it's not like, oh, I'm losing control of my motorcycle over just how big this hail is. It's fucking weird. That's little shit that I'm like, man, this is either going to be a lot of fun or just exhausting. Jake Gyllenhaal as a high schooler is pretty interesting.
Does not look like one.
No. And I'll save all my other thoughts on that later. I will say the one thing I noticed, like when all the storms first start popping up, I was like the extreme climate stuff that we're facing like today, like in our like modern times, where it's like, oh, there's a hurricane in California and then one in Florida. At the same time, there's like a heat bubble in the Midwest, and like just it's like it makes some of the stuff in this movie just feel like, oh,
that's not that big a deal.
yeah, why are they freaking out about this? Like, oh, a tornado in California, like, huh? That I could see that happening like next week, which is kind of like sad. But
Yeah. I mean, I will say this movie gets a lot of the science wrong,
yeah,
like pretty much all of it.
yeah,
But
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the effort. You know?
yeah. I mean, raising awareness, I guess. But yeah,
In a way.
like I don't even know that much about like the science, but I was pretty confident. Anytime they're like, oh, the polar ice caps melting is like making the salt water less salty. It's like, yeah, that's not a real thing.
Yeah.
There's no way that's a real thing. This movie jumps around like fucking crazy, like just from location to location and character to character, and like especially in like the first act when they're like establishing all the characters and stuff. And
Yeah, like there's like there's like scenes where it's like establishing the character, like the guy that's like the head of weather in like California. He's like with his girlfriend in like the room, and then he has to like go check on it or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like, what's the fucking point of all of that?
yeah, and then it's like
He dies.
it's very close to like the Japan scene, and then it's like, and then you meet like Jake Gyllenhaal, and it feels like pretty unconnected for a lot of it, and it's just like, what are we fucking doing? And even, I mean, that's a problem for like the whole movie. Even whenever it's down to like, okay, we know it's like Dennis Quaid and Jake Gyllenhaal really are like the main focus. It still is just like, okay, building some tension with like the Dennis Quaid story, and then just cut to the fucking library, and it just jumps hard. Whenever it was that scene in California with the 3 tornadoes, which I do think it's, oh, that's what I was going to say earlier. I thought that was kind of funny, how they did kind of get that right. Like 19 years ago, they're like, oh, a weather anomaly hits California, and people are just like standing in the road taking pictures. Like, I guess that was like actually happening whenever there's like a hurricane in California recently, because there's like flooding and stuff, and people were like posting videos of people just like swimming in like the flooded streets. It's like that. I mean, props to this director, I forget his name, Roland Emmerich, for like predicting that Californians would be like, oh, this is crazy, dude. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But oh yeah, I was gonna say 3 tornadoes at once. What is this? Some kind of geostorm?
Yeah. I mean, I will say like the effects, the special effects for like the tornadoes and like the flooding.
Oh yeah,
I think that holds up.
oh definitely.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's honestly like, I think honestly decently creative too. Like it's pretty cool visually to see like the destruction and storm scenes and stuff, and
Like,
even
I
with
guess like the tsunami wave or whatever, when like New York City's getting flooded, I'm like, why haven't I like never seen like this clip before?
yeah.
Like, this is like pretty cool.
Yeah, and just, I mean, I'm honestly kind of curious how it was like filmed, where it's like, how did they film like all this stuff in like the streets in New York where it's just water up to like their waist? Like, that's honestly, I don't know, like that took some movie magic, and I think that's cool. And it obviously it holds up pretty well. So, but even just like the blizzard, like I felt like it was pretty creative, where like they would, the way they showed like the eye of the storm and stuff, and just even stuff like just how all of like the frozen New York stuff looked was pretty cool and held up pretty well. And then like they would do creative stuff like showing it from space and stuff too. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know we laughed about this, but the part where it's like all the weather stuff is like going crazy, and they're showing it to all of us, and Dennis Quaid's character is like, we got to do something about this, and he's like, I can predict what's going on if you let me have access to the mainframe. and his boss is just like, no. And like doesn't really explain why, and like he lets him have access to the mainframe like later on in that scene, and it's not really like he convinces him or anything. It's just like or like anything changes. He's just like, no, you can't have access to the mainframe. I thought it was funny that like a huge part of Jake Gyllenhaal's like motivation to like get into some of the shenanigans he got into was like just because he was jealous of that one dude that was like flirting with the girl.
Mm-hmm. And then he like gave it up like easily, not even halfway through the movie.
Yeah, I kind of liked that like very quickly Jake Gyllenhaal and that guy, like they kind of had this beef, like high school stuff, and then it was like, oh, the world's ending. Like, yeah, that doesn't matter. Because I feel like that's kind of realistic.
Yeah,
and
I thought that was done pretty well. Like, they're immediately like, yeah, this isn't.
Yeah, and I think
like,
that's
you're kind of a chill guy. It's whatever.
That's something that I could see other disaster movies being like, oh, like these human characters have beef with one another. When in real life, people would be like, you could have killed my dog yesterday, but like we got to work together, you know. So, yeah. Did want to note that Jake Gyllenhaal isn't Dennis Quaid's son. Huey is from The Boys. Jack Quaid is his son.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of crazy. I wanted to keep note too early on that I was rooting for the one homeless dude from the start when they first showed him.
Yeah.
But it's like it's like, yeah, that dude's gonna make it.
Yeah.
You know?
They show him and like the sick kid too.
Yeah. And you're like, awesome. We're gonna cut back to this whenever I don't want them to. Because that was my first thought whenever they showed the sick kid. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. I know there's gonna be like some gripping moment where like cuts back to her and she's like, but the kid, who cares? Once like the big huge storms take over like the whole northern hemisphere, you know what I'm talking about, like the 3 big hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 3 big hurricanes. What is this? Some kind of geostorm? But
I will say the script, I mean, the dialogue's not that bad.
there's moments that I think it is.
Yeah, but it could have been way worse, I think.
Yeah, there's definitely moments where it's like I was expecting something cheesier, but yeah, there's moments where it's not very good as well.
Yeah.
I don't think the story is necessarily bad either. I mean, yeah, like pacing stuff, but like the story as a whole is like, yeah, it's pretty decent.
It's just like, it's odd because like I do kind of like just like the library stuff, but at the same time I'm like, I don't, you know, like it's weird.
Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I thought it was kind of funny that they're like, because I get the point of the scene where he meets with the president and Dennis Quaid's character, and he's like, you got to evacuate everyone below this line. And it's like, I get it that the northern states are kind of fucked, but at the same time, like realistically, a president isn't just going to be like, hey, most of you guys are fucked, everyone else can evacuate. Because it's like you draw a line like straight through like a lot of the continental United States. Like it's not on like state borders, so it's like, can you imagine living in a town that's like right on that line and the president's like, well, half of the town, like it's like, no, like, you're not going to do that. You're just going to be like, everyone evacuate and head south. If you're in the northern states, it's advised that you do this, you know. It's, but you're not going to be like, everyone, only these states evacuate.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I do feel like, not to judge this solely based on like how realistic it is, because I feel like there's kind of a suspension of belief pretty early on. You're like, yeah, this is not real, which is also like 20 years ago, but I feel like riots would have started way earlier. Like, if there was like multiple like crazy ass, like, I know I said earlier, like, oh, none of this seems that crazy, but if there was stuff that did seem crazy, like weather wise, that was all happening in like the same week, I feel like people would just be like, all right, yeah, we're breaking into the target, we're taking everything. But I also think we're like closer to like a breaking point of society now than we probably were. Yeah.
It's fair.
The two fucking nerds in the library, dude.
Like the guy and girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bugged it down quite a bit.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, a couple cute moments to like flesh them out a little bit, but like it was always like poorly timed. I felt like it was either in the middle of like a really boring scene or like right after like a very intense scene, and it's like in neither case do I really want to see like these two nerds be like, this is what I think about this, this is what I think about this.
Like, that's just...
Who gives a shit? I put this on because I wanted to see like the world get destroyed in a movie.
Yeah. I was going to save this for later, but I feel like if I don't say now, I'm going to forget. I feel like with disaster movies, and this will probably come back up, is like, I don't know if like the director knows where to put the stakes at. Are the stakes like stakes in involvement? Like, are we supposed to care because the world's ending, or are we supposed to care because of the characters?
Yeah.
Like, which is...
No, I mean, that's a really good point.
Like, I think if you make us characters because the fucking world's ending, like, I think that's fine. Because the world's fucking ending.
Yeah. That's like that's not really where the stakes lie. That's more so
if it's
just
more,
like what's happening. And
if it's more character centered, which that's fine. I'm not going to be like, oh... I don't know. This movie it doesn't do enough of either. Like, it does. No, it splits it 50-50, and you're like, you didn't do anything.
Because I've heard of like some really good disaster movies, like The Impossible. That was like Tom Holland's like first movie, and then Greenland. Both of those movies are about like a family in the midst of like a disaster, and like it's just focused on like one family, and like the disaster is more of like an element to the story, and the stakes are within the family. I feel like that's kind of how you have to do it. But
or you just kind of jump around a lot.
But the scene where there's like all the astronauts, and they're like looking at the like three big like blizzards. I think it's a pretty cool scene, but the astronauts are probably like, whoa, those are some huge storms. What are they? Some kind of geostorm?
And they're probably like, man, we're fucked to get home.
Yeah. But also like, there's several moments where they would like show glimpses of like characters or like perspectives or like different places around the world where it was like, I'd kind of like to see like a whole movie about like these characters' perspectives on this. So it was like a disaster movie like this where it's like just from the perspective of astronauts in like a space station. That would be pretty crazy. Like, that would be cool. Maybe that exists somewhere, but yeah. I did think that I guess I was gonna say we could save it, but why not just get into it now? But I just describing this scene out of context is fucking nuts. That there's a part in the movie where there's a like Russian naval ship in the streets of New York, and the high school kids are breaking into the Russian naval ship to steal medicine from the infirmary when wolves come in and start attacking them. Like that's fucking crazy. And out of context, I'm sure it's crazier, but like,
Yeah,
even with the context, it's like, what the fuck are we really doing here?
Yeah, I remember whenever the wolves came on screen and that part, I think I said, I was like, the world's fucking ending. Why do we need wolves?
Yeah. It's like, what are like we were just saying, like the stakes, like we don't.
Just them being outside
Yeah.
could kill them.
Yeah.
Why do we need wolves?
Yeah. And then I think
They don't really do much.
yeah. And
It
it's
just makes the scene and movie longer.
yeah. And like they established earlier, like, oh, the
Wolves escaped.
well, yeah, but like the woolly mammoth thing where it's like, oh, the woolly mammoth like froze with food still in its mouth, and
Yeah.
and then they're like, but these wolves are like climbing up boats. Like, what the fuck are we?
Well, I don't think they were in the eye of the storm just yet.
Yeah, but still, like,
Yeah.
it's
The wolf probably,
they
they probably would have died.
they had been outside for a while, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah,
Well, they somehow fucking survived the flood.
yeah, and like the ship was like above the water level, you know, like the
Oh, yeah.
part where like they're on, I don't know, like the deck of the ship, I guess. Anywhere there you could be like standing on it or like have access to it is like well above like the water level.
Mm-hmm.
So how the fuck did the wolves like get onto that
Yeah.
part? Like they would have had to climb. And like I guess they could have like climbed up in a building and then jumped on the ship, but it's like why would they have done that?
Just fucking a weird choice.
Yeah, it's just such a and then like to follow it up with like just I thought it was really funny the effect of like the ice creeping in, you know, like where it's like, oh, they're like running down a hallway and like the ice is like following them, and it's like I'm not sure if it works like that, you know, like
Yeah.
if it's cold like if the temperature is dropping that fast, like it's
The
dropping.
whole room would.
Yeah, it's not like it's gonna take that long for like the entire
It'd be
corridor.
less of like like you open the door and you don't like, immediately it's not like you notice any frost. It just, the whole room will just slowly start to frost up.
Yeah,
Like that's how it probably would go.
yeah. And it's just such a funny like effect that they're just like running down like a large open hallway, and like the ice is like chasing them. I don't know. It really that part really took me out.
I mean, when like the dad is doing it like outside, I think it's different because he's outside.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, there's an actual storm like behind him, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but like they're just like running down like this hallway and like turning corners and like closing doors, and it's like, oh, the ice got through. It's fucking like,
Yeah.
it's goofy, but it's also like that type of stuff is kind of like fun, goofy, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like
It's more just like a sure, why not?
yeah, it's like, this is funny, you know, it's not like this is really fucking stupid and I'm mad that I'm watching it. It's like, this is goofy.
No, I will say now, you probably have this somewhere in your notes, but Jake Gyllenhaal is not doing a very good job in this
Yeah.
movie at all.
Yeah. No,
I know he's a little younger, but like,
yeah, the only other thing I had in my chronological notes was that the homeless guy did make it. Surprise. And his dog.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I guess to get into specifics,
I guess what doesn't work.
yeah. Well, we can touch on what works first, I guess.
Oh yeah, I guess that's first.
I do think it has a certain charm to it. Like,
Yeah, that's a very specific.
yeah, like I don't know, I brought it up in one of my classes the other day, and there's multiple people that were like, oh, I love that movie. And they're not like, that movie's really good. They're like, I love it. And like, I think that's where a lot of people lie with it, because Megan was even talking about it, and because she had recommended it in the past, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. And I was talking to her about it earlier, and she was like, I just like remember watching that movie a lot as a kid, and it's like, yeah, this feels like a movie that if you watched it in the early 2000s, you'd be like, and kind of grew up on it. I feel like it would definitely
Could scar you.
Oh yeah, but also just have that like kind of charm of like a early 2000s, like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain, but it's like I can see why this is kind of like a comfort movie for some. Yeah, the effects and stuff are good.
Yeah.
The destruction scenes are cool to see.
Yeah.
Visually, I think it's a pretty cool movie.
Characters are okay.
Yeah.
I'm not really like, oh, I hate this character.
Yeah.
Like I think the dad's kind of like a badass, and
Yeah, I will say it's like it's easy to root for the dad and kind of Jake Gyllenhaal, you know, and I think
some basic writing 101 stuff to like make them likable though too.
yeah,
Which is fine. I mean,
yeah, I think like overall like the story is like solid, like it not the most well written and like pacing issues, sure, but like just overall the story of like, oh, there's climate change that like I guess more so the concept I guess is solid of like
yeah,
climate change causes like an ice age that happens like really fast, but to stretch
within
it
a
out
week.
yeah,
Within a week, there's an ice age.
to stretch it out to like 2 hours, I think kind of pushes it a little bit further than that type of a story should stretch, but
Yeah,
it's I don't know, I think it's decently solid, but
yeah. I think overall, it's an alright movie.
yeah, and like I said, like I definitely understand why some people would enjoy this. But yeah, you want to get into what doesn't work? I guess?
Sure.
Yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal fucking sucks. And I was
Yeah.
telling Ryan earlier, I went to Letterboxd to like read some reviews and just hear some other people's opinions. And like out of like the first 30 reviews, like 20 of them are just talking about Jake Gyllenhaal is so cute in this. Jake Gyllenhaal is so hot. I love Jake Gyllenhaal. Jake Gyllenhaal is awesome in this. And it's like, dude, I get it. Like you have a man crush or just regular woman crush, whatever, on Jake Gyllenhaal. And he's younger in this movie, so it's cute, but like he does a bad job as an actor.
Yeah. There is some scenes, like I think the girl like, they're like, it's one of the first scenes where they're in the library, and she like compliments him. She's like, "Oh, you're so brave for like going and getting me." And he just makes like the most awkward face response ever, and it's just like, ew,
Yeah, like just
icky,
physical cringe. It's awful.
yeah,
And like he's just from the first moment you really see him too. He's just like, and like
you're almost like, why are you here?
yeah, like he feels out of place. Like he feels like as an actor, like he slept in that day, and like he's just kind of phoning it in for the performance. But I don't know. Yeah, I think everyone else does a pretty decent job. I mean, no one's like knocking it out of the park, I think, by any means, but no one else is really doing like noticeably bad, I think.
Yeah,
Like there's a few like line deliveries that you're like, like one of the ladies in the library is like, books are good for stuff other than warming. I'm a doctor now. It's like, yeah, maybe pick another background actor to do that part. But,
yeah. And like the love interest cutting her leg and stuff, like her fucking, okay, whenever the flood's coming in like towards that, what a fucking stupid ass sequence.
Yeah.
First of all, everyone's like looking back at the water. It's like, oh, I gotta make sure what I'm running from.
Yeah.
Gotta double check.
Yeah.
But like she goes back to a taxi to get passports for people she doesn't know.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know where they are in the car.
Mm-hmm.
She knows that they're in the car, but she also knows that She struggled to get two humans out of the car.
Right. And it's like, it's one of those situations where it's like, yes, I understand you're trying to show something about her as a character, and so you want to do something
but it never
like that.
really like impacts the later movie.
But it's like, there's other ways to do that too. It's, I don't know, it's like, it kind of reminds me of like the Zod snap, or Zod getting his neck snapped. It's like, well, you know, that's the only thing you had to do. It's like, yeah, but you wrote the scene like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, she had to go back for the passports, and because like she already helped him out of the car, and it's like,
yeah,
you could have wrote it in a different way, where she was just going back to help like one more person or something, and not make it like just dumb, you know? Yeah. There's so many little things like that you could really just.
You could really nitpick this movie if you wanted to.
Yeah. And if you went into it with a negative outlook, I think, you probably wouldn't have that great of a time. But one thing I will say that doesn't work for me, other than like the pacing, I think, like you said, is probably the biggest issue, is like, so I'm taking a screenwriting class, even though that's Ryan's thing.
Mm-hmm.
Needed it for credit, whatever. And also, my teacher from that class is listening. Shout out to that teacher. I hope you're enjoying this podcast and you give us some recommendations. But anyways, we're learning about like the 3-act structure and all that stuff, the basics, and talking about, you know, like the basic narrative question that like defines like a story. And in this, I think it's pretty obviously like, can Dennis Quaid get to his kid, and like, can they make it through this like as a family?
Mm-hmm.
I think is probably, at least in my interpretation, the main one. I think there's other ones as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like a tree.
Yeah,
like it has branches. Like there's.
But,
and it also evolves. Like the first part of the movie is like, can Dennis Quaid convince people that but then like the main thing is like,
can he get to his kid, and like, can they make it through as a family?
Yeah,
and it's like, and the way like we kind of are learning about it, or the way it was explained to me, was like the climax from like a storytelling standpoint is whenever you find out whether or what the answer is to the narrative question. So, you know, like in a murder mystery, it's like, it's when you find out who the killer was. But in this, it's like the narrative question is, can they make it through this as a family? Can Dennis Quaid reach his kid? And the climax is just like, and then it just ends.
Yeah.
And it's like,
there's no falling action.
Yeah. And like, it just, sometimes stories work like that. But it's like, I don't know, it like to have so much like tension throughout like many parts of the movie, and like so much energy and like crazy shit happening in like the first act, to end it on a note where it's like, I don't know, I feel like the best storytellers are going to have like the most like energy and like tension at the same time as like the storytelling climax, you know what I mean? Like when you're finding out the answer to the narrative question, it's also at like the height of like the tension and stuff, and it's like, it's just not.
And I think as an audience, you already know that he's gonna make it to his kid,
right?
And there's things you can do, like there's so many little things you can do to make the audience, even like the audience is like, oh well, it's like gonna be like a feel good type ending, so like obviously the audience knows, but there's little things you can do. Like they could have wrote Dennis Quaid's character to where like he's unsure if he can make it, to like have him like, because he's so like confident, and like he's like so smart and sure, not like unsure of himself in a bad way, but like, you know, he's just fucking super smart and he's right about all this. So he's like, he kind of carries himself like that, but like once like he's like, I need to go to my son, he needs to be like, I'm trying, like I don't know if I'm gonna make it, like have him show some doubt,
right?
Almost like a little bit of subversion of of acceptance that like, oh, I might not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just think there's little things you can do. Because like, I mean, if you look at all movies, like after you watch them, you're like, oh, well, obviously, in retrospect, but there's little things that pop up throughout that can sway you off course.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
and just like,
it's just kind of lazily done.
yeah, just like one or two scenes where it's like just makes you feel a little less sure, adds a lot more to the tension and adds a lot more to the climax as well. But also, I think it's like we were saying earlier,
and
like,
it's also just the way the climax is too, because it's just like, well, you can't be outside.
Well, yeah, and it's like, I think what we were saying earlier with like, you know, you kind of have to focus on like, what are the stakes? Is it like a family centered thing, or is it like a world centric story? And like, since they try to do both, once we reach like you kind of have to wrap up all the world view stuff at the same time. And so it's like, I don't know, it's like they kind of like, they start revealing like, oh, the storm's starting to clear up, oh, all these other characters like the president, vice president, like you see what's going on with them, and it's like, okay, they're kind of, we've got to wrap that shit up too, because the movie's ending once we've reached that narrative question being answered. And so it's like, by the time that's actually being answered, you're like, oh, there's nothing else left. And it's like, we kind of knew that it was going to end on a happy note, because like the mom got away on the ambulance, the storm was clearing up, the vice president got to become president, they were let into like the United States, or the American, I almost said the United States people. The Americans were let into Mexico. Like all of that stuff like kind of wraps up before you even get to like the point where it's like, oh, he does reach his son.
Yeah.
Megan, you have any thoughts? Anything you want to add on The Day After Tomorrow?
I like it.
Is that all?
I like the part where they burn the books.
She wishes they would do that in real life. She's a book burner.
Like a real Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
I just took a quiz that used respond to this lockdown browser, and it didn't ask for a camera. So I cheated.
Cool.
You can cheat anyways.
How do you do it without with the camera on?
Just have my phone like right here.
I'm not old enough for that.
Coward.
Yep. Where's my cat?
He was in the room. In your room.
Okay.
In our room. Anyways. But yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
just the way that everything wraps up is just.
And there's not really like any impending danger for Jake Gyllenhaal. Like they say multiple times, oh, if you're in the north, you can just wait it out, kind of.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they were pretty well equipped to wait it out. And whenever he finds him, it's not like, oh, he's in danger. He's just asleep.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I'm taking a nap. Wait, Dad. But I think they could have like changed it to where, and I'm not making these suggestions because I think I could make the movie better. These are just little things that I'm thinking of. But maybe like with the girl getting like the cut on her leg and getting sick, you could have had that like an infection and like how like it spread to like everyone in that group, and that instead of going to the boat, they're just like, I know it's kind of dark, but you kind of like kill some of that group off.
Oh yeah.
And then you're just like the dad is like bringing the medicine or something.
Yeah,
like he just has it with him, like on the sled or something. He has medicine.
Or like he reaches them and he finds them, but they need the medicine, and then he sees the ship, and then it's like he's going with like maybe Jake Gyllenhaal's like friend or something, and then it's like, okay, that then once, like it just adds a little bit more tension. I don't know. We're not.
Yeah, because but like you feel something. I don't know. I just felt something was wrong whenever he like walks in and they're just like wakes him up from his nap. He's like, "Oh, your dad's here." And I don't know. I'm just like that's what this is.
And then they like hug each other and they're like,
It's almost like a awkward hug too. It's like, hey,
I knew you'd make it.
It's like, oh, cool.
It's like, so did the audience.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Never showed any worry, either of you.
And just that, it kind of goes back to like just the way it jumps around too. It's just like once, like they jump around so much right there at the end that it's like, okay, we haven't seen Jake Gyllenhaal and his buddies in a little while, but the last time we saw them, they were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, okay, now it's going to come back to them. It's like, but every other thing that we just jumped around to was wrapping up in like a positive way. It's like, we know it's about to. And then just the way that like that wraps up, and then it's just like, okay, and everything else is kind of all good now too.
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
And just like, they're like, oh yeah, there's people in all those buildings. And it's like, is there though? Like the way they were showing like the ice creeping in and like chasing after people and like all those windows shattering in all those buildings. It's like, is there people in there? Yeah.
I mean,
that's getting into the nitty gritty though. It's just, but it's hard not to sometimes with this movie.
Yeah, it's just, they make some choices where you're just like, why make the climax, I need to make it to my son?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'm just like...
Well, and it's not even that is a bad climax. It's just like the way they execute it and the way that they don't lean all the way into that. So like you have to show, okay, what's happening with like the vice president? What's happening with like all the other scientists? What's happening with the astronauts? What's happening with the wife and the hospital stuff? It's like you're trying to do all this shit, and it's like it takes away from the tension.
None of it really pays off in a big way.
Yeah, all of it ends in just such a...
Okay.
Yeah, we figured it out.
And you're just like okay.
Yeah, it's almost like like the tension is almost like backwards for the movie. Like the beginning is like very like tense and like a lot of like energy and like action and stuff, and middle act is like in between, and then third act is like, yeah, it's all good, it's whatever.
Yeah.
So that would probably be like my biggest issue, is just the way it all wraps up. Just like, okay, it's over. But
it's
not that it's necessarily like terrible. It's just like it's
not very good.
It's bad. It doesn't like make me upset or anything though. I'm not like, oh, that really bugs me.
Yeah,
it's just that was kind of bad. But yeah. Anyways, any funny catches or questions? I kind of covered a bunch with my chronological notes.
The question is like, this is not scientifically accurate, like at all.
Yeah. My question would be like, what is this? Some kind of geostorm? I love that phrase. Favorite part?
I think my favorite part was whenever they'd cut to like that little small building where like the three scientists were, I'm talking about like the old guy, the black guy, and like the guy that likes soccer. I liked those scenes, and I liked, because like they're, especially towards like their last few scenes where they're just like kind of having some like acceptance of just like, okay, this is like kind of the end of the world. There's like, we're like not gonna make it out of this.
Yeah, no, we're
gonna die here.
Some of that dialogue is honestly pretty solid too. Like
it's like it's kind of an existential type thing. Where it's like
the black dude is like, I wish I could have seen my son grow up, and the old guy's like, well, the important thing is that he gets to. It's like, Did that line like really just come out of this movie?
Yeah, so I was like, I liked those scenes.
Yeah.
And I just liked those characters. I thought
that's a good pick.
It's like it should have just been about them.
Yeah.
And
that's what I mean. Like stuff like that, and then like the astronauts, and it's like, yeah, huh. There's another line too. Oh, when the old dude is like on the phone with Dennis Quaid, and he's like, Dennis Quaid's like, "What can we do?" And he's like, "Save as many as you can."
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of like a sinking in moment where it's like, okay, yeah, no, they are fucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite part, I think, will probably be I'll probably agree with you. Like in terms of like the best stuff, I think is probably those guys. The scene from this movie I'll like always remember is like the wolves followed by like the ice chasing them. Like that's all I'm gonna think of whenever I think of this movie, because it's just, I don't know why, just especially with like just the way it all plays out with like the wolves, and he's got like a hatchet, and then they bite the one dude on just his ankle, and they like, I don't know, and then like they're carrying him on the raft, and I don't know, it's goofy, and I honestly liked the goofiness of that scene. I don't think it was supposed to be that goofy, but like just seeing like ice chase someone is funny to me. Yeah. So I think verdict is where we're at now.
I suppose not guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I would say not guilty, just because I think like this is probably, for this genre,
this could be as good as it gets.
Yeah, I'm sure there is like some like really solid ones, but I don't know if we're watching any of these looking for a really solid movie. But even some of the other ones we have in mind for the next couple weeks, it's like, yeah, they're not going to be like this good. So
yeah,
I'll give it a not guilty.
And as far as number, probably 5.
Yeah.
And I mean, enjoyability, for those who care, probably like a 7.
Yeah.
But 5.
That's fair. Yeah. I was thinking like an average score of like 6 between the two.
Yeah.
Because
I mean, you could really just watch like the first half and then turn it off.
Yeah. Like you could.
I think you'd get the most out of it.
Yeah. But I mean, if this movie's ever like on TV or something, I might be like, yeah, I'll watch it. It's not a bad time by any means. So
it's just like Climate Change, the movie, where the protagonists get everything they want without any tension.
Yeah.
It's like, I need to convince everyone. Oh, well, you convinced everyone in like 45 minutes in. Everyone believes you. They're on your side now. Oh, I didn't go get my son. He's in New York because of the plot.
Okay, we'll help you. We know you're gonna do it. The wife's like, yeah, I know you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then he does it. Yeah.
Like Jake Gyllenhaal's like, yeah, my dad's gonna do it.
And his friends are like, yeah, we know your dad's gonna do it. No, it's, yeah. I almost feel like this movie could be like remade and be like really good, but I also feel like a remake would probably take some of the charm away that makes it like redeemable, you know what I mean? So I don't think they should, but I think
you could try another climate change movie. I don't know.
I think this is kind of a dumb genre already.
You might as well just get even more done with it, I guess.
Yeah, because I don't know, just like what do you do with this shit, dude? And like, how do you center, like, you can't, it's so hard to do like a small scale story.
You almost
with like
can't.
A disaster.
I think you could you almost do it like in Ackermans, where like you're showing like the world falling apart, but like you just show tragedies of like small families. Or
but then it's like I don't know, because it's like, I don't know, you probably could do like a movie about like a family that lives close to a volcano in like a small community and like how it affects like the community. But it's like, I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out what this genre has to offer. Yeah. I am excited for the more goofy ones to come. But like I said, we're going to keep it under wraps for the most part.
Yeah.
You'll probably be able to guess some of the ones we're going to go for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am excited, though, to watch some more of these. I really wanted to do the Lego movies because I think I would have enjoyed those a lot more, but I don't... Way less to talk about. And watching new stuff is always good, so... Well, I think that just about wraps it up for this episode. If you got this far, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any more recommendations for disaster movies or even just movies down the road you want us to check out, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. You can reach out to us at the Nerd Authorities podcast at gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at the Nerd Authorities. Subscribe to us on YouTube at the Nerd Authorities as well. Surprise. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything.
Yeah.
We'll be back next Friday. Still no Dawson for now, with another disaster movie that you'll find out next week what it is.
Right.
I'm going to tell Ryan after this what it is. I think he's a little tired tonight, so he might be like, God damn it. But we'll see. Anyways, we'll see you next week, guys. All right. Peace.